A little over a year ago, I saw this post on Instagram. The community coral reef intrigued me, and I contacted Christina Harkness. I wanted to learn more about it, and I also told her that I would like to cover the exhibit for Rehash Fiber. She had another idea, and she invited me to join her in Port Townsend, Washington, while she was doing her artist in residency there. At that time, we would be able to visit about it, and also I could take part in a work day that was going on up there. So I invite you to come along right now and see all about it.
Hello everybody and welcome. This is Cherie with Rehash Fiber. I am here with Christina Harkness, artist and the person heading up the community coral reef. So you've heard me talk about this. Meet Christina.
Hello.
Yeah. So it's just so wonderful to spend time with you, and we had a great dinner last night. We got to talk about more things, and I learned that there is so much more to you than the community coral reef. The art that you do is phenomenal. So we'll talk about the reef first, and then maybe we'll talk about some of the other art after that, because it's worth you knowing about it.
Sounds good.
First of all, what is your fiber art history?
Well, I am a self-taught knitter, and I kind of alluded to last night that I kind of grew up with a little oppositionally defiant child, and that actually plays into how I learned how to knit. My aunt who raised me, I have no idea why I became interested in learning how to knit. Nobody in my family knitted, and I think I found like the little 1950s Coates and Clark Learn How to Knit books. They have just terrible, tea cozies in them, and I wanted to learn how to knit, and so I asked my aunt to get me some needles and yarn, and she said, "No, I'm not going to do that. You'll just give up on it. It'll be a waste. So no, I'm not going to do that." Well, I don't know if it was her telling me no. Maybe that was her way of inspiring me to do it, because she knew if she said no that I'd go ahead and do it. But I ended up taking sharpened pencils and garden twine and teaching myself how to knit that way, and just making swatches out of garden twine. And I don't think that went on for very long. And all of a sudden, my grandma, we went over to Grandma's house, and she took me into the back room, and she had this whole collection of all of her knitting needles and some of her yarn, and she just gave me the whole thing. And of course I thought she was psychic, because I never realized that the two of them talked. So that was just like, got all of my grandma's stuff. And that was the beginning of it all. It just ticked for me, and just started teaching myself how to do socks and hats and blankets and all of that good stuff, and I haven't really stopped since then. So.
That's amazing. That's great. Well, what really I would say impressed, or just it made me excited, is that your thoughts on the things, something inspires the thought, and then you are just able to create it. So we did touch on the spectrum, which, first of all, fiber art is for everyone to enjoy. We all have fun no matter where you are on the spectrum. And I am a pattern follower type of artist, where to do what you do, to have thoughts and then just create it, is definitely on that artist spectrum, and like the far end of it, which I just admire so much, because it's just really interesting that you can do that.
And, it's something that, I developed after, 20 or 30 years of knitting. It's not like that was the first thing I did. Many years of making sweaters and just all of the shawls and mittens and all of that good stuff. And then just kind of getting to a point where anytime if you gave me a pattern, I would start to just look at patterns as a suggestion. And so it's like, yeah, I know you're telling me to do it this way, but I want to do it this way. And so I really started to move away from using patterns, and then got to a point where if I saw somebody with a sweater, walking down the street, I'm like, I like that sweater. I'm going to make that sweater, and then just make that sweater. And
that's fantastic.
And then it just kind of devolved into making weird things. I knit the human digestive system from tongue to the end for my kids' science class in middle school. I've made brains and hearts and hand grenades and all these different things. And so it's just a matter of, getting an idea in my head and thinking, well, how can I make this out of fiber?
Mm-hmm.
And then just going with it. So
that's awesome. So the history with you knitting and designing your own things, were you in crochet at the same time, or when did that come about?
I think I knitted probably about 25 years before I ever started to crochet. And it simply was because I realized that there were certain things that I wanted to do in my fiber art practice that knitting didn't allow me to do, or that it looked clunky if I tried it that way. And I'm not one that would ever crochet a sweater. I wouldn't crochet socks, and that's just me. That's nothing against anybody that wants to do that. It's just that for me, crochet is a vehicle to accomplish a certain shape or a certain thing that's in my head. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I use it for.
Okay, very good. Are there other fiber arts that you do?
I would never say I was a weaver. I could weave, very simple things. I used to spin. I used to take my yarn from raw fleece all the way and spin it and dye it and all of that good stuff. And now I am to the point where I have so many things that I want to do. I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, I love to be around that. I love to be around, go to the fiber fairs and see the sheep and see people do amazing things with fiber. But it's like, yep, now I can just admire that as a fan and then get on with my stuff. So.
All right. Very good. There's only so much time in the day, and I know it's like you got to just focus on what you really want to be doing.
Yep.
Yeah. So my big question is, how did the community Coral Reef get started?
Well, from the very, very beginning, like way long ago, I was interested in marine biology. From like second grade, I had an amazing second grade teacher, Mrs. Clark at Gardner Elementary School in Clio, Michigan, who, when it would rain, we would watch Jacques Cousteau, reel-to-reel projector Jacques Cousteau, and it just pulled me in. I was one of the Cousteau kids that got so inspired in the 70s, and just, he was my biggest hero. And so always was interested in marine biology, either wanted to join the Merchant Marine or be a marine biologist. And I started to study marine biology, and actually my aunt that raised me passed away, so it was like I had to drop out of school and get a job. And so my job, I decided, was to join the Merchant Marines. And so I have a little bit of the marine biology and then a lot of the Merchant Marine. And, sailed around the world and really got to see all over the world of how we really abuse the ocean, garbage in the ocean, and just things that we human beings do that are not cool. And so being able to combine creating, especially when I started crocheting, it really was looking like, oh, well, that, if I do this and do this and do this, it really turns into like a coral, that kind of hyperbolic coral shape. And as soon as the internet came around, it was a matter of, here I thought, I had created this idea. Oh yeah, you can create, a coral reef out of fiber arts. And then you jump on the internet and it's, other people way ahead of me. And so, the Wertheim sisters from Australia were really the first people to innovate the idea of a fiber art coral reef. And they inspire people, including myself, all over the world. And so when I was living in the Midwest, I really wanted to, create, I want to make a whole room that looks like a coral reef when you walk in. So I'm like, I'm going to do it all by myself. And, I made a few pieces and then just, this job is way too big for one person. Anyway, and so I just kind of, put the stuff in a box and said, well, it was a nice idea. And then I had used to live in Washington State, and then I moved back to the Midwest, and then came back to Oregon. And so maybe my first couple months of being in Oregon, I went to a fiber art retreat. And my project that I was working on at the time was an aquarium. I had a friend that gave me an empty aquarium, and so I was making my own little tiny coral reef in there and making fish and everything for it. And so one of the gals that was at the fiber art retreat, her name is Shanna, and she's like, oh, well, I've made hyperbolic, shapes in crochet, and so I'm like, well, have you ever seen the fiber art coral reefs? And we started talking about it and swapping pictures and getting all inspired. And I said, it would be really cool if we could do this, and get other people to help us. And so she's like, well, I know people at the Lincoln City Cultural Center. And I'm like, well, let's start, getting people excited about it. And so it was both of our enthusiasm and some of her fiber art connections in the area. And we just decided that we wanted to get everybody involved and see if we could create a display so that it would feel like you are, walking through a coral reef, and it's all fiber art. But we're talking about healthy corals and healthy animals, and we're also talking about bleached corals, dying corals, plastic in the ocean. And so we really want to talk about what it could be, what it is, and what we have to do to make it better.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. That's great. Well, I know I first saw it when you had your, your cover page on Instagram. Mm-hmm. And the colorful pictures attached to that really caught on to me, and just the information that everybody is welcome to participate.
Yeah.
And I thought that is tremendously fun, because each fiber artist that would like to is able to submit something that will be in an exhibit that will affect people. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was really wonderful.
And what's really cool also is that, I coming from the Midwest but living in the Pacific Northwest, I have friends back in Minnesota that are making stuff that, it's kind of fun when you're in, and by no means is Minnesota landlocked. I mean, we have beautiful, Great Lakes, 10,000 lakes. But, it's not the ocean. We don't have coral reefs in Lake Superior. But, it doesn't matter where you're at. In the middle of Kansas, let's participate in this. And I think that's one thing that, when I was in Wisconsin, people, thought, oh, well, that's creative, or that's interesting. But I think if it's not something that you see every day, or that it's really present in front of you, you might not get it. Mm-hmm. And so really inspiring people from all over the world to create pieces and know that it's going to be in this exhibit. I think that's what's so exciting. And I love it. I love it when people mail me stuff. It's just like Christmas, because it's like, oh, what's going to be in here? What did somebody create for it? So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's great. That is really cool. All right, so if somebody would like to make something and contribute, how do they go about getting the information and then getting it to you for the exhibit?
You can go on my website, which is www.coralknitfiberarts. And there's a page specifically for the coral reef. You can also Google the Pacific Northwest Community Coral Reef. That'll bring it up as well. And if you live in the area, there are, it's a list of about 8 or 9 different yarn stores that people can go to and just drop corals off. Or you can just contact me and you can mail it to me.
Okay.
So either way.
Fantastic.
And it's, it's anything that you want to make. We dwell in reality, so we can't have mermaids. That's for another day. But if you want to make fish, if you want to make creatures, if you want to make corals, healthy corals or bleached corals, if you want to get creative and make something out of plastic, we have. If you go on YouTube, you can look up plarn. It's like plastic yarn that you cut up plastic bags and make it into yarn, and then maybe make something out of that. Get as creative as you want to get.
Okay, great. And what is the deadline if somebody would like to do something to get it to you for?
I would like to have it in my hands by August 1st of 2023.
Okay.
The reality is this is going to be a traveling exhibit. We're going to have it in more than one place. So 2023, August 1st of 2023 is when we needed to have it for our Lincoln City exhibition, which is going to be in September of 2023. We're also going to have an exhibition in 2024 in Salem. So if people donate after that, that's fine too. But we really want to get the push for our Lincoln City exhibit.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so the other reason I'm out here is to take part in your workday. Can you please tell everybody about that?
So one thing that I've been doing to try to promote the coral reef and people getting involved is I've been having like a coral crafting day. So I will have a day at different places, in Washington and in Oregon, where people can come. They can get patterns if they're pattern users. They can pick up some yarn and they can see pieces of the coral reef to get kind of inspired by that. And so tomorrow we're going to have Coral Crafting Day at the Fierro Marine Life Center in Port Angeles. And this is actually going to be the first time that we're going to have a crafting day outside of a fiber art kind of venue. We've had it at yarn stores before, we've had it at the Lincoln City Cultural Center in the textile studio, but we've never had it at a marine center before, so it'll be fun. We're coming into the folks at Fierro, they're on the science end of it, but it was so cute when I went in there to check the facility out and where we were going to be at. They had to show me one of the people there makes little nudibranchs, little sea slugs.
Oh.
And they're like, oh, we have to show you so-and-so makes these nudibranchs. So they had to take me in the back office and show me all the knitted and crocheted little sea slugs that they had back there. So I thought that was cool. So
That is cool.
yeah, they were very cool about it.
Yeah, I look forward to that. I'm going to also be covering that, so you guys will get to see that. You'll get to see what happens tomorrow. It's going to be great. All right, so you've got the gist of the Coral Reef project that's going on, but I learned so much more about you and your art last night, and it was so amazing and powerful that my brain was even thinking about it all evening and all morning long, because it's just really cool that an experience then blooms in your brain to then come out into artwork. So please tell us about that. Tell them about it.
So something that, aside from the Coral Reef project, I really have been doing freeform knitting and crochet. I find it really hard now to sit down and try to do a pattern. My brain is just like, no. Let's do it this way, let's do it that way. So what I have been doing, and I've been doing it for probably the last maybe 5 or 6 years, is I've been doing a freeform knitting and crochet mixed media practice where I take a stretch canvas that you would normally paint on, and I wrap it in a warp and a weft all the way around the canvas, and I'll go this way around the canvas, and then I'll go this way around the canvas, and I'll kind of weave that thread in so they're stuck together like a mesh. And then I do freeform crochet usually is the background, just different shapes, however, whatever I'm making. And then anything else, it's just dependent on what scene I'm making, what I'm putting on the canvas, whether it's going to be knit or crochet. But then I just basically am painting with yarn. And it really, it came about back when I lived in Washington State, and I had a very stressful job. And one of the places that was kind of an area that I covered my jurisdiction in Washington State was Whidbey Island. And Whidbey Island is one of my favorite places in the world, and there's Deception Pass Park at Whidbey Island. And it has a very iconic bridge and just beautiful hiking trails. You can look out over the ocean, see the whales in the ocean and all the seals and everything. And it was a day that it was just a very stressful work day. So I'm like, you know what, I need a little self-care. Just pull the car off and just like hike a few minutes down the trail, take a deep breath. And so it was this very specific hiking trail that I was walking down, and it was just a matter of like standing between these two trees and looking out over the bay and just having my mind blown by how beautiful it was. And at Deception Pass, it's there's a lot of currents. I think the reason why it's called Deception Pass is the water is very deceptive in how the currents move. And so it's very swirly, very, lots of currents. And so when the sun shines on the water, you just get these beautiful patterns on the water. And that was, one thing that really, brought my eye to what I was looking at. And so I'm like, I really have to be able to figure out how to translate this. And I don't personally have depth perception. And so it's like, I've always wished that I could paint or draw or anything like that, and I can't. And so it's like, well, my medium is fiber. So how do I make this in fiber? And, it was just like, I have no idea. Get back in the car. I'm driving along through Oak Harbor and past the hobby store, and literally had this sign that said, canvas is 50% off. And I'm like, a canvas? It's on sale. So I, whipped in the parking lot, and I still have the picture somewhere on Facebook, I think, of me in my car with this canvas in the back seat. I can see it like, bonking me in the back of the head. And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to do with this, but I'm going to do something. And so, bringing that home and just trying to figure out, number one, how do I attach, fiber art to this? What do I want to do? And the first thing that I did make was an underwater scene. I just call it the Reef, and there's pictures of it on my website. Kind of my learning canvas, where I was just trying to figure out what I was doing. And initially, I had done a lot of actual weaving with yarn, using those warps and wefts to hold the yarn in place. And then I did a little bit of that, and then I'm like, that's really not the look that I was looking for. And so then it was a matter of just doing freeform crochet and making pieces of that and sewing it to the canvas. And then that, turned into like a little coral reef scene, making some fish and all of this stuff to put on it. And, it's still hanging above my sofa. I like it. I always get compliments on it. It was in Fiber Art magazine, so they liked it too.
Oh, that's awesome.
But then after that, then it was like, okay, now I figured out how I want to do it. Now I want to do my Deception Pass. And so then I made the Deception Pass canvas, which is also on my website. And it's a picture of that exact spot on the trail, looking out over the water. And there's an orca in the bay. And one of the things that is important about the waters there in the Salish Sea is that you have transient orcas and you have resident orcas. And the resident orcas are very much, they're a family group, and they're very much endangered. They suffer from their food not being what it should be because of human intervention. They have a lot of issues with the noise that goes on with the Navy flying planes and doing all of their stuff. And so they're under a lot of stress, and it's a very it's a small family, so if they lose one of their members, it's a big deal. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. So that's kind of what my orca is in that canvas. And what I really liked about that is I wanted to, I can't give a whole bunch of money to organizations that I support. So what I did do is I donated that canvas to a nonprofit organization up in Canada that has an art auction every year, and they were able to auction it off and get a large amount of money for their organization. And it's just it made me feel good.
So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Now I saw a little bit last night of the Humpback Whale one. Please tell us more about that.
Well, I think that was the canvas that really taught me a lot and inspired me that, if I can do this, I can do anything. I had applied for a grant to do it, and I got a grant. I wanted to make a realistic humpback whale. And originally I wanted to have it as 2 canvases, so I wanted to have a mother and then a child. And then I got done with the mother and I went, no, I'm done. That was it. But it's 6 feet long and 3 feet high maybe. It's biologically accurate. It's a humpback whale. Center of the whole canvas basically is the eye of the whale looking at you as the viewer. Really kind of studying you and kind of holding you accountable for kind of what you do. How you treat the oceans, how you treat the creatures in the world. Just kind of sending you a message that I'm holding you accountable. And it was done in fingering weight, literally fingering weight yarn on a bee hook, and it's 6 feet long. And it took me, each of my canvases, if I really, really work on them, take about 18 months or so. And it was a lot of fun to figure it out, fun to research it, fun to let's go on Google and look up whale lice. And so how do you crochet whale lice? And making it and then stuffing it so that it's 3-dimensional, but then also having to account for that as you're making it. How fat do I want my whale? And what is it really going to look like? And then making the different pieces, because I'll make a piece, stuff it, make the next piece, and then have to finagle that and fit that onto what's already there and already stuffed and get it all sewn together. And it was a lot of figuring out, learning in the moment, and being able to just kind of visualize it in my head. And that's when I know that my creative juices are working, is that I can kind of slip into that headspace of, just kind of even just daydreaming of crocheting and how would I do that? Sometimes just as a mental practice, I'll just be out in the world walking around and I'll just see something and think, well, if I wanted to crochet that, or if I wanted to knit that, how would I do that? And then just playing that mind game with myself.
That's neat.
So, yeah.
You can inspired me a little bit to think like that, because I never have. I've just taken what was given to me and worked with it. And now I think I'm going to look at something and just think about it. And maybe you can too now. Just think a little differently. How can you do it? And there's no harm in having a thought and just trying.
It's a lot of fun.
I bet. I'm going to try. I'm going to start with something small and just say, how could I do it? You never know. Yeah, that's awesome.
And you could even do it, on a small scale. How would you knit or crochet a little car or something, or little animal or something like that? How would you shape it? How would you, what would it look like stuffed? How would you surface design it? All of that good stuff. And it's just playing around, and it's the biggest thing is not being afraid to mess it up. And that's the one thing that I think. I used to teach knitting classes, never crochet, but I used to teach knitting classes. And that was the one thing that always struck me, is how people were always afraid to make a mistake. And that really held them back. You know, I don't want to try something new because what if I screw it up? And it's like, well, what if you don't? You won't learn.
Right.
You know?
And it's only yarn.
Yeah, it is. If the biggest mistakes that you make in your life are in yarn, you're living a good life.
That's it. And I've said it to myself, and I've said it to others. You know, that's exactly it. It's only yarn. There's no life or death involved. No. Try, explore, go for it. Yeah, have fun. All right. I'm so thrilled that we've got to do this and visit together, but I do want to show you all what she's working on here. It's amazing. So let's go take a look at your canvas in the other room. So Christina, what are you working on here?
Right now I am doing a tree. And so this is kind of an unusual project for me, in that there's not much water to it. I'm a very much of a water-based person. But this is something that last year I was in this area. I was in the Olympic Peninsula, Olympic State Park, and went to the whole rainforest. And just was so, I mean, it's an ethereal, beautiful place. And literally the second I got done with my hike, I went to the nearest yarn store and bought just tons and tons of different greens, and just felt like I needed to recreate what I had seen and felt in a canvas. And so this is my Olympic, I just decided to name it my Olympic canvas. And it has the skies, the big beautiful skies, the mountains, a lake, and then it will be covered in trees. And I'm trying to figure out my biggest obstacle right now is, if you look at pictures of the whole rainforest, there's just like the old man moss and lichen all over the place. The place is just dripping with it. And I don't know how I'm going to do that here. I tried a little bit up in the right corner there. That's what some of that weird fuzz is on that tree. It didn't look right, but I'm going to power through it, and then I'll figure it out. It will come, but I haven't figured it out yet. So yeah, I've got, yesterday my project was making this tree. And so basically it's, how do I want to create the different species of trees and the plants, and I try to do it, I try to be biologically accurate. I will Google things, I'll look at field guides. I'm a little more lax when it comes to things on land, I think. Yeah, so it's coming from a real place. And so this will just be covered with trees and moss and plants, and I haven't decided if I want to do like a sea stack out here. I don't know if this is a lake or the ocean yet, so that will come. I'll figure that out. I think a sea stack might be making it a little bit too a little too much. So it's probably a lake, and we'll just keep it at that. But yeah, this is what I'm working on right now.
Thank you for joining me for part 1 of the Rehash Fiber travel adventure in Washington State. Stay tuned for next week when we go to the Fierro Marine Center in Port Angeles, Washington, And join all the fiber artists as we work on the community coral reef. All right, for your parting shots, I'm going to show you the sweet deer that were hanging out outside of Christina's cabin when the interview was finished. All right, everybody, happy travels, and thanks for watching.